In the heart of ancient Alexandria, a crossroads of civilizations, in a place suspended between the Mediterranean and the desert, in 355 AD, Hypatia was born. She was the daughter of Theon, one of the greatest mathematicians of his time, and she grew up immersed in the study of mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. A woman destined not only to challenge her own era, but also to outlive it, in the memory of those who refused to give up the freedom of thought. From a young age, Hypatia was not raised to be submissive, as might have been expected of a woman in her time, but rather to the discipline of the mind. Her wise father, in fact, did not want her to be merely knowledgeable, but cultured, aware, and independent. He educated her in mathematical sciences, Platonic philosophy, astronomy, and even mechanics. Hypatia, with a mind as sharp as a knife's blade, soon surpassed her teacher. The young philosopher began to frequent places of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria, the Museum, the laboratories where the movement of the stars and the mysteries of numbers were studied. Alexandria at that time was a hotbed of cultures. Greeks, Egyptians, Jews, and Christians mingled in a delicate tension between dialogue and conflict. It was in this place of great ferment that she developed her thinking. She soon began to teach, not confined within strict walls, but beneath the sunlit porticos of the city, dressed in the philosopher's cloak. She spoke to anyone who wished to listen. And many came, young patricians, students thirsty for knowledge, imperial officials, and simple onlookers. Her lessons ranged from mathematics to astronomy, from music to Neoplatonic philosophy. But above all, she taught a method, the method of free inquiry, of thinking without chains. She would say, preserve the right to think. Thinking incorrectly is always better than not thinking at all. Hypatia did not impose doctrines, she posed questions. She showed her students how to look at the starry sky, not as a spectacle to be passively admired, but as a book to be read, as a way to discover the harmony of the universe within the laws of geometry. Among her study tools, she perfected the astrolabe, built models to study the motion of the planets, and wrote detailed texts on major mathematical works, making them more accessible to her contemporaries. But she knew that science without a guiding philosophy was blind. For this reason, she also guided her students in the difficult art of governing themselves, of not being overwhelmed by passions, of pursuing justice. However, the world was changing. Christianity, once a persecuted religion, had become the new dominant force in the Eastern Roman Empire. Alexandria, always lively and chaotic, found itself torn apart by conflicts between Christians and Orthodox, pagans and Jews. The tolerance that had made the city great was beginning to crumble. In this climate, Hypatia represented something incomprehensible to many. A free and authoritative woman, loved and respected by pagans and moderate Christians, but hated by fanatics. She associated with powerful men, such as Orestes, the imperial governor, not out of a desire for influence, but to offer counsel with the wisdom of someone who knows that philosophy, without engagement in real life, is sterile. But her neutrality and her fame made her a target. Bishop Cyril, determined to consolidate his own power, saw in her and her followers an obstacle. Rumors spread that the sharp-minded philosopher was preventing reconciliation between Cyril and Orestes. Such a rumor was enough in a poisoned atmosphere to unleash fury. In March of 415, an enraged mob ambushed Hypatia as she was returning home. She was dragged into a church, stripped naked, beaten to death with shards of pottery, and finally burned. Her body, like the very body of knowledge itself, was torn to pieces. And yet Hypatia was not defeated, because violence can destroy flesh, but it cannot erase memory. It cannot extinguish the light kindled in those who dared to think beyond the dogmas and boundaries of religions and doctrines. Among her precious reflections, we find concepts and values that still sound extremely relevant today. Some of them, one might even say, are more relevant today than ever, such as the truth does not change because it is or is not believed by the majority of people. In this regard, it is well known and evident that even just in recent years, mass media and institutions have repeatedly tried and continue to try to impose a certain way of thinking or versions of events, labeling them as correct, indisputable, and unquestionable, and relying precisely on the fact that the majority of people would accept these versions. Therefore, for this reason, they would correspond to the truth. Hypatia of Alexandria, 1700 years ago, had already understood that this was not the case. The great Egyptian philosopher has survived through the centuries as a symbol of intellectual freedom, the selfless pursuit of truth, and the dignity of the thinking woman. Her legend has inspired Renaissance philosophers, Enlightenment scientists, and modern free thinkers. She used to say, "Reserve your judgment until you have examined all the evidence." This too is a phrase that still sounds relevant to our ears today, in a world where ignorance and prejudice often kill the truth. Let us imagine Hypatia walking among the white columns of Alexandria, with her calm gaze and her simple dress. Not a warrior, not a martyr, but a teacher. A woman who knew that free thought is the very breath of the soul. And today we can still inherit her legacy. We can still choose her path, the path of relentless inquiry, open-mindedness, and the gentleness of reason. The path that defends the right to ask questions and to be questioned, to cultivate critical thinking and the benefit of the doubt, to resist hatred and ignorance with courage and knowledge. Hypatia represents the hope of those who know that every free mind is a star in the darkness and can make a difference. And her whisper, across the centuries, still reaches us. Pursue what is true, not what is comfortable. Live as a free soul.